Annyeonghaseyo 여러분, welcome to the end of Korean cinema. I've waited 4 weeks to watch today's movie because of my other projects. 4 weeks! Why was I so eager? Because I saw that Lee Sang-min and Park Hae-jun are starring in it together. So let's talk about The Eighth Night or 제 여덟 일의 밤. Wait, is it 여덟 or 8? Korea has 2 number systems. Which one should I use for the number 8 this time? Korean speakers, help me out. 여덟 or 8? Anyway, the movie stars Lee Sang-min, who's a really underrated actor in my opinion. He was fantastic in The Witness, but he's also able to elevate a stupid comedy like Mr. Zoo. He's a great actor. Besides him, here is Park Hae-jun, who was fantastic in a show called The World of the Married, which I highly recommend to anyone. The other 2 leads are Kim Yoo-jang and Nam Da-rim. When the Buddha was alive, he got into a fight with a monster or something, and he tore both of its eyes out. He sent the eyes to different corners of the world, because if they're reunited, the world is gonna turn into a living hell. It couldn't get much worse, I think, but whatever. In the present, there's an ex-monk, a young monk, a dead monk, a girl, and a wandering eyeball. At first, I really wanted to bash this movie to pieces, and I can guarantee that I'm not gonna at least a little bit, but then I thought maybe I should take a more constructive route. Because this movie is another failure, guys. It's bad. It's really bad. But there's something to be learned everywhere, and this movie is a prime example of lazy writing. So let's take a look. You might know this cliche that when a movie starts with narration, that movie is doomed. But you know, cliches exist for a reason, and while obviously that's not always the case, usually the statement is not wrong. Of course, The Eighth Night starts with a narration. A really vague narration, but I'll get back to that. My immediate thought was, oh, this is not a good sign. But okay, in this case we do need some explanation. We're dealing with a possessive spirit or whatever here. It's probably best to get it over with as fast as you can, so let's do some narration. Now, when you've done the narration, never ever repeat the same information 10 minutes later by a character, because that would be stupid, right? It could indicate that the filmmakers think the audience is stupid, or it could indicate that the writer, who also happens to be the director, Kim Tae-young, simply just didn't give a f***. Now, this is just one thing, but it does happen. After the narration, an older monk gives us the same information dumped 10 minutes after the opening. And in those 10 minutes in between, the movie is just jumping aimlessly from one scene to another, one character to another, without any concern for flow, cohesion, and most importantly, setting up the story and the characters. Lee Sang-min is supposed to be the main character. You know what his intro in the movie is? A close-up shot of his face, and then 2 guys talking about him at the construction site like, "Hey, who is he? Oh, he used to be a monk!" And then it's instantly the next scene. I was like, he's the main character, right? Right? Because this scene was like 20 seconds long. What the fuck? Now here's the thing. I like movies that deal with the supernatural, so this movie really could have worked for me. And if I look at it from a visual point of view, there are things I can appreciate here. I like the color palette of the movie, certain transition shots look really cool. This is not a bad movie to look at when the special effects are not happening. But my point is that on a technical level, this movie is pretty acceptable. The trouble lies in the script. I think we've all seen many movies where the world is in grave and immediate danger of an evil spirit trying to take it over, or something along those lines. Whether a concept like this works or not is a matter of many things, but one crucial thing is the characterization. No matter how great of a threat you create for your story, if your goal is for the audience to believe the threat, you have to make it personal. I mean, it has to affect the characters personally. But that also isn't enough. You have to create strong, very well fleshed out characters. Because if we are able to experience the whole thing through their eyes, a story like this has major potential. Of course, The Eighth Night takes the easier route by not creating characters at all. Seriously, there are actors, but there are no characters. For example, Lee Sang-min is supposed to be this very special exorcist monk who's destined to save the world and also to free some spirits or whatever. Do we experience any of that? No. He doesn't even talk for at least 30 minutes. I was like, is he mute? And then he starts talking. There's another character who also doesn't speak for a long time for no reason. And then there's Nam Da-rim, who plays a young monk who is sworn to keeping silence, so he also doesn't talk for a long time, and these are main characters in the movie. Now, you might have realized that my synopsis didn't really make much sense. Well, that's because that's the only information we're given. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Now, when you combine this really vague information with characters that don't talk, it's really hard to get interested in the story, because we don't really know the story. Characters are just doing things and going to places, but we never know why. We never know how they knew how to get to those places, and most importantly, I personally don't know why should I care for any of this. If I had to summarize this movie in one word, I would say it's vague. It's vague in its story, it's vague in its characters, and it's vague with the things that happen in the movie. I mean, things do happen, but nothing ever seems the least bit important. And thanks to this vagueness, the movie becomes its own enemy because, since the rules aren't set up properly, basically anything can happen. And it ends up making absolutely no sense whatsoever. This movie is supposed to be a mystery thriller, but it's neither a mystery nor a thriller. It lacks the intensity and the gloomy nature of a thriller. Sometimes the film tries to be a horror movie but ends up being a parody of horror movies. The possessed people move in that overused sped-up way with crackling noises while they're making an awkward smiling face. And it's just ridiculous. Seriously, at the end I was laughing my ass off, without the creator's intention. It was hilariously bad. Every scene that tries to be heroistic ends up becoming an unintentional parody. Also, nothing really happens in this movie. The characters are constantly on the move, so you don't really feel that the movie ever drags, and yet, nothing really happens to the characters, they're just on the move. But there is one potentially really cool thing. A lot of people die a horrible death. Off screen. The movie always cuts away from the cool parts, or just mentions them in conversations. It's ridiculous! So, the lesson to be learned here is that if you want to tell a story that's supposed to be something urgent and terrifying, create actual characters that are able to communicate that to the audience, and put those characters into situations where they actually have something to do. Also, crafting an actual story helps. Just because you have fantastic actors doesn't mean they can act out a piece of wood. Man, what a waste of time this was. I cannot find one single redeeming quality about this film. It's out on Netflix, so go check it out if you want, but I wouldn't recommend this to anyone. This is one of the worst movies I've seen in a long while, and I'm gonna give this one 40%. If you enjoy hurting yourself, give this one a try. 여러분, 오늘은 여기까지만 해요. 영상 봐주셔서 감사합니다. 이 영상 좋아하면 구독해주세요. 그리고 좋아요 버튼 눌러주세요. See you very soon. 다음 시간에 만나요, 여러분. 안녕히 계세요. Bye!